Is this true? I don't know where I read this. That I mean, living when you lived in Malibu, like, did Cher want? I don't know if I saw this on the show. Did Cher want you to come play tennis or something with her? I mean, listen, I'm like a self-respecting gay man too. I have to ask.
I love that you know this. And yes, so I ran into a relative of hers at a Starbucks randomly, and she's like, "Oh, you got to come over." And then we exchanged numbers. And then Cher wanted me to come over. I guess she has a tennis court. They offered me to go swimming. I was in shock. I was so nervous. I still haven't done the reading, but my God, I mean, to meet somebody like Cher would be insane.
Okay, so let's just break this down. Are you telling me that you're too busy? I mean, you have the show, you have this wait list. Are you too busy to go and just swim in Cher's pool?
I am never too busy for Cher. I just, they say like never meet your heroes. I'm like so anxious about that aspect, but I mean, what an incredible life and history. And you're going to see me there eventually, I promise.
I don't know where I heard that, but I've met Cher before, but not
Oh,
very briefly. And it's just what you think that Cher is Cher. People are like, she's Cher. There's
I
nothing
love that.
you would.
I'm going to have to check it out. You've inspired me to pick up the phone.
What do you want people as they, everyone who hasn't watched these 9 episodes that have all dropped on Netflix, like, what do you want people to take away as they watch Life After Death with Tyler Henry?
I would say one of the biggest takeaways of the show on Netflix, Life After Death, is really about the importance of honoring our loved ones in the here and the now and preventing ourselves from experiencing future regret. As I've said before, so many people that come to me come with regret, what went unsaid, what went undone. And I think the show really is a reminder of, picking up the phone. Don't go to bed angry. Make sure that those in your life that you value, that you're on at least terms that you'd be willing to go out on. And so often we kind of always assume people are going to be there. And the show's a reminder that, life happens, life can be fickle and it's fragile, and we have to make the most of it for those who are in it.
So knowing that life is fickle and make the most, I mean, do you like, has your own personal experience with death in your life of people you lost, and like, do you fear death or you handle death? I guess it's like 2 questions. Like, when you've lost
Sure.
people, how have you reacted? And like, do you fear death knowing what you know?
It's definitely given me an insight that death is just an inevitable part of life, one that people don't like to talk about. But, I still look both ways when I cross the street. I still do everything I can to be self-preserving, to try to stay alive, to try to be healthy. It's given me a deep appreciation for what it means to be alive. It reminds me of the quote of, getting older is a privilege denied to many. And it is really true. It truly is a privilege denied to many. So it's given me a deeper appreciation for longevity, for health, for wellness, and just the importance of staying alive.
That makes a lot of sense too. What about, right? So why do you think there are so many, just a 2-part question too, why do you think there are so many naysayers? Is it just that we don't understand things that we can't comprehend? And look, you're a professional, you're doing this, your goal is to bring this relief or just understanding to the other person, but it has to feel a little good, as we've seen on this show so many times, when you have that naysayer and then you bring up that little fact and they're like, oh my God, you're the real deal. Like, it's a 2-part question.
For sure. It's definitely gratifying for me. I think when it comes to that, my big goal is to not to be somebody who's trying to convert people, right? I do what I do with the goal of just helping people in front of me. But the beauty is, through the show, we've seen so many skeptics really transform into believers. And I think for me, when it comes to why there's such a resistance, I think of what I do as being ideological, and anything ideological like religion or politics, right, are not typically things you bring up at the dinner table. They're things where people are very impassioned by. You typically kind of have a bit of a binary on anything ideological. There's 2 sides. And so naturally, I think, being that it is ideological, you're going to deal with people who just simply don't believe. And I kind of, to some, represent that belief. And so I expect it and I honor it. And I think, it's really okay. I think when it comes to the unknown, there's a great quote of, we don't fear the unknown, we fear what we think we know about the unknown. And I think that's very true when it comes to what I do. I think a lot of people just fundamentally don't understand mediums, psychics, even what we claim to do on an individual level. So it's very easy to make kind of broad judgments out of convenience. So I just try to focus on what I can do for the person I'm reading and see if they get something out of it. And if they do, then I've done my job.
You don't glow just a little bit when that person has that light bulb moment of like, oh my God?
Well, I feel thankful to be able to act as a catalyst for people, some people, to recognize that there is more to life than what we see and maybe approach life in a more meaningful way. To be able to get that validation and start that process at least is really gratifying for me. But, readings are not a cure-all. I certainly don't get it right all the time. My goal is just to try to leave people better than I find them.
I love it. Well, a lot of this too is I've seen your live shows. Let's talk about that because you are now pretty much April. You're on the road off and on for like the next year, basically.
Yes, yeah, back about 50 shows or so. So I'm excited. Hitting the road's so different than one-on-one readings, but it's so gratifying. And then I'm able to do a lot of readings in a short period.
Are you, because like I said, I've been at your shows. I mean, when you're done seeing a Tyler Henry show in person in this big stadium, man, and I'm not one, like I'm not an emotional person. I'm from New York. I'm hardened. Man, it is an emotional evening. Even if you're not even near that person, you're like, you leave crying and tears. Like, are you exhausted after these shows?
It's exhausting and invigorating. Well, what I love so much about live shows is, you might have 2,000 or 3,000 people there, and not everybody's going to receive a reading as much as I would love to. But what you find is that there's certain common threads that exist within every reading that I think people can take away from. And in that way, I think through other people's readings, through other people's validation, you can get a sense of validation in your own loss and in your own relationship with your loved ones who've passed. So, the audience kind of starts as 3,000 separate people. And by the end of it, I feel like everyone kind of walks away thinking about each other, thinking about each other's stories and loss and resilience. And it's a bit more of a group by the end of it.
I would agree. Like I've never gotten a personal reading at one of your shows, but you leave understanding your own losses that you've suffered with your immediate circle from other people's stories.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really the goal at the very least.
It's goal accomplished. What about your new book, Here and Hereafter?
So Here and Hereafter was really the culmination of the work during the pandemic. I had a lung collapse and almost died and had a lot of downtime in the hospital to try to recover. I was hospitalized for over a month and had a lot of time to really reflect around kind of what I've learned, what I wanted to share and put out in the world. And for me, really, the book, to put it concisely, is, if the departed could live again, what would they do differently? And I think there's a lot of value in looking at other people's mistakes, learning from other people's mistakes. And in that way, I think we can kind of see those who've lived and died, and if they would do it over, what they would do differently and how that can benefit our lives.
What about, before we wrap up, have you say like you're still growing as a medium, which makes sense because you're only 26 years old, not to age myself here, but through this wonderful Netflix show, Life and Death, have you learned anything about yourself? Like, did you learn anything about yourself as a medium from this Netflix experience in these 9 episodes and these readings?
I would say these 9 episodes in filming this show, it has really taught me that comfort is on the other side. I'm so sorry. Let me restate. One thing I've learned as a result of doing this show is that learning is on the other side of our comfort zone. And it is so true for me. I mean, these readings for me are a lot emotionally, physically. There's a degree of expectation that you have to manage as a medium. And it's very often uncomfortable. I want to share what I get with people. I want to help them. I want to make sure people have a meaningful experience. But there's always that risk that I'll be wrong or that nothing will happen. And so being able to take that leap of faith really is one of trust, and has really taught me that that's where the most growth is when you can kind of face those things that make you want to retreat and do it in a meaningful way. And you prove to yourself you can.
Wow. Well, again, Life After Death with Tyler Henry, all 9 episodes. Again, I just wanted to watch one, but it's phenomenal.